Today, I want to talk a little bit about how do you make that presentation not 1%? How do you build that great presentation? And it really comes down to three steps. You need to plan, you need to practice, and then you need to say. And so in terms of those, when we start to look at the plan, I think the most important pieces are you need to look at the audience first. And that goes back to when I've talked about the idea of your planning, you're getting together as a team, etc. One of the big things is to think about who your audience is and how you're going to address them, and then think about what the slides look like. Also, in terms of the presentation and the pitch, you need to be able to have a call to action. It needs to be a call to action that comes through the pitch itself. I can often do this by putting together just a one-page outline, key messages, and it lays out, and I can switch that around a little bit in terms of figuring out this seems to be the way that it's the best and helps me in terms of the storytelling framework that I'm going to use. But then, especially for case-solving competitions, it's a what, so what type of framework that I'm using. And again, if we go back and look at some of the other videos I've talked about so what, I've talked about so what in some of my newsletters, etc. So it's really important in terms of this is how we understand what's going on. So what does that mean? And really develop that. And that starts to build the why in terms of the now what, which becomes the solution and all the pieces we need in the solution. Another piece of this is bring on emotion first. Fix it. Emotion is what engages your audience. The logic explains and creates the clarity. The emotion is the engagement piece. And you have to come back to that also in terms of making sure your audience continues to be engaged. And you can do that through emotional and through the storytelling frameworks. And then you need a strong start. You need a strong end. Often at case-solving competitions, I see people and hear people say, now we open the floor to questions. I think that's a waste of an opportunity. I think you need to finish off really strong, talk about the impact the solution's going to have. If you finish off the story or the strong story, you start at the beginning in order to get that emotion, in order to engage your audience. And then it's practice time. Depending upon the length of the resolution you have, this will vary significantly in terms of how much time you have to practice it. Maybe not. And maybe that practice comes from the practices and prepping you for this. You've got this 3 hours. We're going to spend most of that 3 hours putting together the solution, the presentation. And then I'm going to go back to this is the stuff I learned during the time we practiced in the team. So in terms of the practice, you need to focus on things like tone, timing, your body language. And again, that may change in terms of, are you doing this virtually? Are you doing this in person? Practice in the situation, practice in front of the mirror, practice in front of the camera, record yourself, which is easy to do nowadays. In terms of things like hand movements, your facial expressions, all need to get aligned with the message. If it's a joyful message, those postures, those hand moves, those facial expressions have to be joyful. If it's sad, the same type of thing. And then we'll start to eliminate fillers and fluff. And fillers are the ums, the ahs, those types of things. But at the same time, what you want to do is get rid of what's not necessary. What's just sort of that fluff that doesn't really mean much, doesn't get to the core of explaining why your solution is the best solution. And then in our workshop, I guess a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about this idea of the magnetic voice. And I think it sort of registered to me because I think I've talked about this with my students for the last 20 years. But I think he's put it together nicely in 5 Ps. Paying attention to things like pitch, power, pace, pauses. Pauses are terrific, powerful tools. And then the prosody, as he puts it, the melody, the intonation that you have. Right? So working those things, again, you've got that voice that aligns with the messages that you're telling during the length of the time you have to tell your story. So that comes you get to that 1%. And again, it's about connecting with your audience. It's not about perfection. It's being connected with your audience. I've seen in my career probably close to 10,000 presentations. I don't think any of them have been perfect. But the powerful ones are the ones that connect with the audience. Looking at things like effective eye contact, effective gestures. Again, get that engagement and get that connection to the audience. Talking about 2-minute cycles is, however, most puts it, I have the same idea. It may not necessarily be 2-minute cycles. There's things like stories, participation, surprise, humor, unanswered questions, etc. that you can build your presentation. You can break it down into cycles of different periods of time or the same period of time. That again, you can talk about something, you can then re-engage your audience on something else as you start to talk to it. And again, a lot of case-solving templates are set up that way in terms of they're broken down into these specific pieces. And those pieces can become some of those cycles. You may have to introduce another cycle within one of those pieces. I think the other piece that's important here, especially when we have preliminaries and finals that have different times, is figuring out what those cycles are and making sure everybody on the team becomes interchangeable with those cycles. And then I think the big question is around managing errors. How do you manage your how do you manage your mind? How do you manage your words? And there's a lot of ideas out there, I think, in terms of a whole tool that helps you with that. I think one of the things I suggest to my team members all the time is go over what are you going to say in those first 2 or 3 sentences. Post those, get those down, and then everything starts to flow from that. What you're doing is finding something inside of yourself, each in terms of your body, in terms of your mind, calm the nerve, and makes it a lot easier to speak.
Join us in transforming the lives of young aspiring professionals by supporting our podcast, to Discover Your Mad Skills Toolkit YouTube channel, and our LinkedIn newsletter at buymeacoffee.com/treadsoftly or by scanning the QR code below. Your contributions directly fuel our mission to equip these individuals with the vital mad skills that today's employers demand. Together, we can make a significant impact on their career to success.